Thank you, everyone. Welcome, everyone, especially to Marnie, who I'll introduce in a moment, but particularly to all the wonderful business people that have featured in my book that have come along tonight. We'll hear a bit more later. But also the readers of my book. I know a few of you have been holding up the book. We've got a few community builders, Rotarians, and some friends supporting me tonight. So thank you very much. I'd like to say that writing a book makes you a lot of money, but there was actually 3 other reasons that I wrote it for. And the first and foremost is I really wanted to value the contribution that business people make to our communities. Every single person in business is really making a difference. Collectively, small business is the backbone of our national economy, and they really are the unsung heroes. They don't like patting themselves on the back, so I guess I decided to do it for them. Secondly, I want to share the learnings and inspire others. I've learnt so much just chatting to people along the way, and they're amazing. We never stop learning, especially in this very rapidly changing environment. You'd almost think that I'd written it for a pandemic, wouldn't you? Yeah. And business is not rocket science, but it does require vision, determination, passion, and a whole heap of other attributes that I outlined in the book. And last but not least, I really want to remind everyone that rural is important. When I first started doing the circuit conference, and I know Marnie and I have crossed paths a few times, the regions are talked about a lot, but not the rural towns and communities. It really did seem like I was a bit of a lone voice, but I'm so glad that that has changed. Suddenly it's a hot topic. And, people are realising that rural communities are essential service and social hubs for our primary industries, and we all eat and wear fibre. And who wouldn't want to live in a rural town? The best way to do it is to create your own business. So that's a really good segue to introducing Marnie Baker, Managing Director of the Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. Some of you might be wondering why Marnie is launching my book. And first up, she has a bit of a rural connection, but I'll let her explain that to you. But secondly, the Bendigo Community Bank model has played a major role in supporting rural towns Australia-wide, and the Collie Community Bank enabled me to write some of these stories in the book over in Western Australia. And finally, I was in the Bendigo Bank headquarters in January 2020, and I picked up the history of the community bank, and it was published by Wakefield Press. And I thought I should contact them and see if they'll publish my book. And they did. So lots of reasons why I asked Marnie to do the honours today. So without any more ado, thank you, Marnie. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Kerry, and thank you for inviting me to help launch a new book, Australian, I've got it here, Australian Rural Entrepreneurs. And I do really commend you, Kerry, on your perseverance in making this a virtual launch now, given how many times we tried to actually be physically in person. So I think the perseverance has paid off. I'd also like, just to embarrass you a bit, Kerry, I'd just also like to acknowledge your passion. And you're right, we do cross paths on the circuit. But, as you're a real advocate for regional and rural Australia, and I follow everything that you do, and I'm truly inspired by the work that you do, in promoting the virtues of living and working in regional and rural Australia, because I know how good it is, but also how you provide a platform to promote just, all these amazing stories that are like in your book here and the achievements of regional people. So it really is an honour to be here, and even to be here virtually. So not only to help launch your book, but to also, like I said, acknowledge your work and celebrate the amazing people and businesses whose stories are reflected in your book. And to share a bit of my own perspectives, as you alluded to before, as the daughter of Cuna dairy farmers, a proud regional Australian and a Bendigo resident, and the Managing Director and CEO of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. But I myself am really passionate about the role that businesses and communities play in Australia's, referred to this, in the economic and social fabric of Australia, and really, advocate for the role of business partnering with communities. And my passion, I think, for that and that giving back has been really influenced by my own upbringing. As I mentioned before, and like some people mentioned in your book, Kerry, too, it was quite amazing when I was reading through it, just how many people there was from Cuna and Leachville and even the likes of Sea Lake, where my sister-in-law's from Sea Lake, or Rapanyup Minyup, where our first community bank was established, or there was just such a connection. Swan Hill, where I've got, again, my brother and sister-in-law in Swan Hill, so there's a lot of correlation between that. But I think it is that, it is that upbringing, I think, that's sort of laid the foundation for my love of community, coming from a rural area. And you're right about the small towns. People do talk about regional, but they tend to think that regional, and I remember talking to someone, they said, oh, no, I went out to regional Australia. I went to Geelong. And I went, that's not regional Australia. God forbid you ever actually get out into a real sort of regional and rural town. So, I think my upbringing has exposed me just to the resilience and innovation that I saw growing up, as on the farm, and it's a farming country, as in Cuna, and farmers themselves had to just constantly adapt, like small business, but to changing economics, the weather, natural disasters, any sort of market demands. And farmers and small businesses alike are often associated with being pioneers of modern day Australia, but that pioneering also extends to entrepreneurship and innovation. And, I feel really privileged to be able to, lead Bendigo and Adelaide Bank now, having been with the organisation for... We've got some dogs in the background.
I think they're children.
Oh, they're children, are they?
Yes.
Well, it is.
Whoops.
There we go. I think I muted the wrong person. But I am 32 years working for Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, and I feel really privileged to be able to lead this bank, because it really is aligned, with my own values and philosophies and the way I think about things. So, we at the bank, through our many brands and different points of presence, we're really privileged to work alongside, and supporting and assisting many rural and regional residents and businesses and the communities in which they live, work and operate. And whilst this might be primarily by helping with finance of homes or farms or businesses, we do play a really important role in helping communities themselves, empowering them to take control of their own sort of economic security. And some of the stuff, that we've been associated with has just been amazing, the outcomes from an economic and a social perspective. And I often talk to people about how being in a regional community forces you to remain grounded and connected. And here in Bendigo, where I live, and where our head office is, people know who I am, and often I meet people when I'm out and about, whether that's at the footy or the supermarket or wherever it may be. And, people are only too willing to tell me what the bank is doing well and what it's not doing well. So you never sort of lose that connection with your customers, or that perspective of what people are looking for from your business. And I'm sure, many of the people on the call here will have that same experience in their own local communities. So you mentioned our community bank model, and it is a great example of grassroots connection, with communities and with our customers, and that positive social impact that business can have in communities. And, Our community partners that we partner with actively consult, in their communities to understand what the local opportunities are and the priorities, and this feeds very much into business decision making. So we're really proud to work alongside communities and very humbled by the more than $250 million that's been returned to Australian communities since the community bank model came into being back in 1998 and in Rapagna. Like I said, a wonderful town that's mentioned in your book. And the community bank model has been a really important social and economic proof point of the power of business and communities working together. And, like I said, coming from this sort of background, what it's like trying to get funding, trying to get your business up off the ground, and it's easier to get funding once you have money. And so a model like this does provide the money into communities that then you can go with your hand out for further funding from government, who will, double or triple that funding for you. And so when we extrapolate that $250 million out, we work it out to be more than $1 billion now. Right across, Australia, across over 250 different communities right across Australia. And they're not only, it started a little bit with, the shade sales at the kindergarten or the jumpers on the kids' backs for the football, but now you've got communities that are really, they've built big infrastructure in their communities. They've brought doctors back into their towns. They've they're starting to address really big societal challenges like mental health and youth unemployment and homelessness and things like that, which are often common issues across regional and rural communities. So it's really amazing to be a part of that right across communities right across Australia. But ultimately, I think leadership's really the key to building successful communities. Something which, Kerry, you display that, and the people in your book display it in spades. We need to have more leaders, more of the nation's leaders coming from rural and regional backgrounds, and be that in government or business or not-for-profits, because I think it's really vital. And Kerry, you do a terrific job with this, is informing and helping to inform and shape debates and decisions that will and does impact back on us, especially at those sort of federal levels. So, we're all aware of of COVID and how that's presented a really unique situation for Australia and, in the wider world, and it's causing significant social and economic upheaval. With the long-term impact still, we're all challenged. It is a changing environment. But while the pandemic's forced us to stop and rethink about how we act and engage, it's really brought to light a number of issues that were once just accepted, I think, as the norm. And now we're in a new norm, and that's begun. And I think there's so much opportunity for regional communities to strengthen that have emerged from this. COVID exposed an inherent weakness in Australia. The fact that 40% of our population is actually based in 2 capital cities. There's a huge opportunity, and we all know why we live regionally and rurally. It's the best place to live. And, if COVID's shown us anything positive, you don't have to live where you work, you can live where you love. And you see a lot of examples of that now, people moving out and moving themselves, their businesses, into regional and rural Australia. I'll say unfortunately, I'm one of a small group of CEOs of ASX-listed companies that call regional Australia home, but, it shouldn't be the case. There needs to be many, whether that's big business, medium or small business. We need to get more out into the regions. And we should be, encouraging people to do so. So, big businesses and big careers don't have to revolve around big offices in big cities. We know that, and it's never been more evident than over the past 15 months. So, the crisis has unlocked the realisation that people can work remotely and be highly productive. They can run businesses. We know that. But it's shown a lot of others, that you can actually run very successful businesses outside of capital cities. And, as you've heard me speak about, I think, Kerry, before, but, that local knowledge and connection, particularly in regional and rural communities, is one of the the main ingredients in the secret sauce, I think, that makes our bank great. And we don't want to keep that ingredient a secret. We want to encourage more businesses and organisations to invest in and set up businesses in, create jobs, build skills, in regional and rural Australia. But, even during times of change and challenge, opportunity is everywhere. It's a matter of knowing where to find it, how to harness it, and being open to the possibilities that emerge. And there's no question that recent events, have dampened the optimism, for many in our community, because they certainly are challenging times. But as a regional Australian, and I said before, a proud regional Australian, I know how regional people tick and how regional communities come together both in good times and in times of crisis. And as you said, Kerry, in your book, there has never been a better time to become a rural entrepreneur. And some of the best ideas and businesses have been born out of times of crisis. So through the power of the authentic stories included in your book, Kerry, you've shared valuable insights into the entrepreneurs that walk quietly amongst us, and specifically those on the other end of this Zoom screen here tonight. Forging new opportunities and taking control of your own sort of destiny in rural communities right across Australia. So Australian Rural Entrepreneurs is a fantastic read and presents an excellent opportunity to learn from the experiences of people who have been, and I'll say, brave enough to become entrepreneurs. It's not easy. So, you haven't just dreamt about it and talked about it. I think we can understand how we can all assist the entrepreneurs that are amongst us along the way. And in addition to inspiring new businesses and encouraging existing businesses to keep innovating, these authentic and practical stories from right across rural Australia, I think, will help our wider communities to understand the importance of small business and why we should encourage and support them. So once again, thank you, Kerry, for inviting me to launch your new book, Australian Rural Entrepreneurs, here tonight with everyone, and congratulations on bringing to life so many wonderful and amazing success stories.
Thank you, Marnie. That was lovely, and there's just so much synergy between the businesses in the book and the bank, and we do thank you. It's a big honour for you to come and do this tonight. But I want you to stick around a little bit longer because I'm going to ask a few people to speak. And I'll start with Anne Jury from Bakery on Broadway, because she actually wrote the foreword for my book, and she was going to organise the catering at the Bendigo Bank tonight for us all to enjoy. But instead, she's at home. She's had a bit of a interesting week. But before she talks about that, I started watching this Bakery on Broadway business model before it even started. It was just an idea. It's not often you actually get to follow a business from the concept right through to fruition, and they celebrated their 5-year anniversary. So Anne, you able to come online and tell us a little bit about Bakery on Broadway, how far you've come in that 5 years?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? I think yeah. No, it's been an amazing journey for us. And just, I'm going to point out that in a small town, we try and encourage to use the bank we have. We did have ANZ, and they pulled out of the post office. We've gone to Bendigo Bank, and we should have done that from the beginning, but we wanted to support what we had in the town. But Bendigo now is our bank, and we thank you too for all that you've done. But our business started from a very small idea, I suppose, a few drinks at the local races, and buying a building in the town, and gathering 4 couples that had no idea how to bake bread or run a business. So it's been not a tough journey. We've all enjoyed it, and I think we've done okay. So 5 years down the track, we had a bit of a scare last week when we were told that we were a tier 1 COVID business. So when we first heard of this guy going from Melbourne to Bendigo, Melbourne to Mildura, we did think, oh no. And like all of us owners and staff were a little bit worried and thought, oh, hopefully he's gone somewhere else. So anyway, Sunday night, we were watching Ali Cuppa on Facebook and just checking everything because it was going to be announced. And then I went outside to get the washing, came back into a phone call from Anthony Judd, our CEO of Bull Oak, to say, you're it. the blemish that we are the blemish on the Bull Oak Shire, because the Bull Oak Shire has not had one case of COVID-19 the whole time. So not that we were too worried. No one of our staff had shown any symptoms, anything like that. So it was close the business down. Everyone went and got tested, and anyway, there's all but one has got a negative test, and that one that hasn't had a test back is pending. They've lost her sample. Oh. Yes. So it's because I'm wanting to put it out on, Facebook and everything that, COVID free, and I'm sure she is COVID free. But so it's been an interesting week of what we've had to do, within the business. It was interesting that the only was Anthony Judd and seen it on Facebook, and that we knew we had possibly an infection. DHHS didn't contact us until the next day late, I think because they'd had some bad press. But so they've been very good since. Absolutely couldn't fault them. They've been very helpful. So all our staff went home, all had the test, stayed at home. We all had probably a nice time.
Nice rest, and that's not all bad either. How many staff have you got there, Anne?
We have about 12 staff. Mm-hmm. 5 were on that day. Mm-hmm. I was on that day as well. So they all had to get tested, but it also meant their partners, and we had been to the pub after work that night, and just lots of things. So it could infect the whole town. So we were all very wary.
And none of that would have been your fault. It sounds like you've managed it really well. But I just think back to you've created all that employment in town, and now you're responsible to look after those staff. And it sounds like you've done a very good job of it.
We were, we weren't really worried because none of us had symptoms. And I think what it's done for our town is made people be so much more aware of what could possibly happen. And I was talking to the doctor a couple of days ago, and he said that the COVID clinic in our town had sort of just for the injections had slowed right down. He said, now there's no bookings left. We have had to just put everyone off till the next week. So it's been good in that way.
If there's got to be a good thing out of it, that's something. Yeah. But anyway, we're glad you're all well. That's the important thing. And next time we're going up the Calder, when restrictions have eased, we'll look forward to calling in, as we always do, at the bakery on Broadway, Wycheproof, if anyone's not sure where the Bull Oak Shire is. So thank you, Anne. You've been such a great support, allowing me to interview you and follow your journey, and I really have enjoyed it. You're one of my favourite businesses, you know that. Collaboration, I love it. So thank you for speaking tonight.
And I'll just add one thing, Kerry. Thank you so much for including us in your book. and it's been great for us, and it's got us out there more. And I just want to say that we have been downgraded to a tier 2 COVID infection site, so we are allowed out in the community again.
Great news.
We had the same person stop, which is 2 kilometres down the road from me, the Ravenswood servo. Yeah, so I feel for you, Anne.
Thank you.
I know what it's like.
It's put us all on notice, so that's good. Now, someone that's a little bit warmer, Trent Small, Solar Relief. Now, not pandemic, but a cyclone back, I think it was 2012, Trent will remind me. He's a bit of a problem solver, which is why I included him in the book. So, Trent, tell us what problem you solved, and I think you've had a bit of exciting news to share lately.
Yeah, g'day everybody. So basically, the first power supply system that I made was in an esky, and that's how come I ended up with that Big Bear coolers that I put on the chat there earlier. We might be able to push some of the cool clutch bags through Big Bear coolers. So that's more of an online business, a sideline sort of thing that we did. But since then we've been all around the world now. So we've been into places like Iran and the UNESCO World Energy Globe Awards. We went to Fiji when Cyclone Winston hit up there. Ended up in the villages. I ended up with the past CEO of another bank, Donna Quinn. I don't know if Marnie knows Donna, but we ended up in the villages in the middle of nowhere with Donna and taking power up there. And then, yes, we've sort of been all through the Pacific, and we're currently doing some stuff for Kenya. Going to send some systems over there and run some pumps to pump water to irrigate crops for villages up there. But the whole development of the solar relief system for the past 5 years anyway has been with the Australian Defence Force, and doing like frontline power generation for defence. And I met with the Chief of Army last month, and we've currently got there's a big operation out of Townsville, Operation Talisman Sabre. There's 17,000 troops from the US and UK and Japan and Australia and wherever else. But I've got my systems up there. There's seven different systems that doing all these different applications on the front line. But basically, one thing that surprised me was that our Australian Defence Force was trying to operate in stealth mode on the front line. And then they've got fuel operated generators or diesel generators that they've got to dig holes and try and baffle the sound. And then they've got smoke signals and noise and everything to make them be found. Or the alternative is for them to communicate. They've got to start their vehicles and then they've got to move and hope that they don't get blown up. So that was a challenge that I set about when I found out that that's what they were doing. I set about solving that. And I think we're pretty close to solving that one now. So we've innovated our own solar panels that they've got, the power systems, and as technology's evolved over the years, we've been able to, our last report that we got from our last field trials actually come back for the first time ever and told me to scale the systems down rather than didn't have enough sort of energy or power to be able to give them the redundancy that they need. So we've got some stuff happening there with defence, and next week I'm meeting with the Australian Governor General, and the Defence Minister and the Governor General are being briefed out in the field the day before I'm going to meet with them. So
that's fantastic news. Yeah. And I know there's a few people sending messages. We've got someone in the Army Reserves, and Lloyd was a pilot, so worked for Defence, so the Air Force. So fantastic work, and all from solving a problem with the domestic power going out. Your brain's ticked in, and well done. It's great that you could join us, Trent. So thanks for sharing that story. So watch this space, hey?
Yeah. Thanks for everything that you've done too, Kerry. I believe that we met after the North Queensland Field Days a number of years ago, and we've kept in touch ever since. And I think that was one of my first awards that I ever won. It was the Rural Entrepreneur Agricultural Invention Award. So yeah, since then it's sort of come a fair way.
No, thank you for sharing your story with us. It was great. So the next person that I'd like to introduce is Elise Brown from Fair Dinkum Dogs. Now, most of you will know that Elise is my daughter. So I've been very involved. She did a lot of hard work. I'm not sure whether it was early 2020, Elise, you rebranded your business, new website, and you were just set to rock and roll, weren't you? So how did your year go last year?
So I actually was picked up with the Digital Champions group, which is a federal government funded to digitise small business in 2019. And so I had lots of training. We were flown to Sydney and put through training at Facebook headquarters with Michelle Bridges. And I also got picked up with Facebook there. So they pick 30 businesses every year to promote, and they picked Fair Dinkum Dogs. So I had actually been in the business for, it's been 15 years now, but when the kids were little, I sort of slowed the business down and focused on being mum. And I was just wanting to ramp it back up when I was poached by Facebook and supported by them. So that happened in 2019, and as Mum was saying, I was ready to rock and roll and get going again. The kids were hitting school. My youngest, Phoebe, was going to school in 2020, so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's hit go with this small business, and COVID hit, of course. So I thought to myself, how can I juggle homeschooling, small business? And I thought, well, this is the year about learning growth, learning how to grow, and slowly implementing these things into my business. I wasn't really wanting to hit the accelerator too hard because I was homeschooling, and making sure my children were happy and supportive was the main priority for me. But in April, we were asked by Bendigo Bank to have our products on display in their shop in Mitchell Street, Bendigo. So I was really feeling like the wheels were turning with the business again, and I was at that point of, do I employ? I think I'm ready to employ. And so when I got asked by Bendigo Bank, I said, yep, okay, no worries. And we've employed 2 people to help out. So I ran into my next door neighbour's house and said, have you got a working age child? And she said, I do, and she's studying fashion. So Lucy's actually out the shed now working away. And I ran into a school mum down the street, and I said, were you making masks? And she said, yeah, I was. And I said, will you come and sew for me? And she's turned out to be the best thing since sliced bread. And she's a mother of 4. So before COVID, when COVID was quite good, if one of her kids rang up sick and had to come home from school, she'd just go pick them up, bring them back to my house, and they'd watch a movie while we kept sewing. So I'm feeling really lucky that I've got such flexible work for myself as well as other people. And it was being supported by Bendigo Bank that really gave me the confidence to hit go with that. So thank you so much. Obviously, having a mum like mine, there's somebody to bounce ideas off, and every day, well, most days we walk or we chat most days. So I've always got that sounding board, and I'm just so proud of her and the books that she's written. It's so great to hear all the stories you've told me actually in paper form now, Mum. So I'm just really proud of what you've achieved. And thank you so much for all the support.
Oh, thank you, Elise. You probably could have said it helped being an online business and you were really well set up to cope with the pandemic, but sales have been going really well, haven't they?
Of course, I'll never say what you want me to say. You know.
I know.
So I make waterproof dog coats here in Castlemaine, and I do have a couple here to show you. Oh, stand back a bit. So it's oilskin, which is cotton made waterproof, and then we've got the warm fleece lining. We also do them with a cotton lining, little tartan one, and that makes it more like a little raincoat. So I've been doing that for 15 years with Fair Dinkum Dogs. The business started 27 years ago by a couple of other Castlemaine women. And so we've been doing dog coats. It originally was a wholesale business selling to about 32 pet shops around Australia. I found wholesale really hard. And obviously as websites were starting to take off, I actually became a mother right as websites were really taking off and becoming something. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do the hours I'm doing supplying all these pet shops. And I decided to pull the pin on the pet shops and just sell direct to my customers. The thing that I found was that at the time, all these dog coats were starting to be imported from overseas. And I just felt like I couldn't compete with that. But what I was really good at was custom making. So whippets, greyhounds, dachshunds, bulldogs, anything that you couldn't just walk into a pet shop, get a coat to fit off the shelf. So that's where I headed down. And I really focused hard on my whippet, my greyhound coats, because I quickly realised nobody was making waterproof whippet and greyhound coats. So they're our top seller, as well as dachshund coats. So we've been kept really busy that way, but we also started selling dog treats. So I love my my package. I'm really proud of that. This is relatively new. I think we've only been doing it for 6 months. I lose track of time. I think most small business people do that. So we've got a huge range of dog treats now, all Australian made and owned, and we're selling soap, all natural pet soap. So this has just meant that the business has grown and grown and grown. So we've doubled our sales every year for the past 2 years, and yeah, I'm really excited about the future. And obviously that is because I'm online, and the way things have changed for online business has become a lot easier in many ways. There's training every which way, so yeah, pretty excited.
Well, I think you've got to go out and do a bit of sewing now. That looks like a few sales coming from Wycheproof direction, but thank you, Elise. Now, I'm just going to finish up with Larry. Thank you, Larry. You've been very patient. Larry O'Toole from Grafitti Publications. Now, usually he's travelling around the world and Australia attending events. I'm not sure that he's been able to do that lately, so I really wanted him to share how his business has been travelling lately. Larry.
Interesting times, Kerry. You're right. Our business is built on being everywhere and gathering material from everywhere. And when COVID hit, I thought, well, what's this going to do for us? This could be disaster, because, as all of you know, life in printed publishing world is been very tough over the last several years. But we've managed to be able to stay exactly where we were all the way through it. We're very specialised in what we do. And just as things in the world have changed, that's also thrown up opportunities, which we've been able to take advantage of because we're a small family-owned business. And in particular, any of you that follow the publishing world, you will have noticed that particularly corporate publishing has really been belted. And I've maintained for all the years I've been in it, which is 45 years or so now, that most corporate publishers had the wrong business plan, and I still think they do to this day. And it's been borne out in how many of them have collapsed when hard times come along. And that's, as I said, that opened doors for us because all around the world there have been small operations like ourselves who've sprung up out of the ashes of those organisations. And we've been able to take advantage of a lot of those small operations because they're very similar to us and take on distribution for them in Australia. So we've now got distribution agreements with 4 or 5 American publishers. We're still sending our own stuff to America, and we just, right now, I'm in the middle of doing a co-publishing exercise with a publisher in New Zealand. So while it's changed dramatically, it's, I've always said you need to build on the experience that you build as you go through all these days. And one of the things we did that's been borne out really well with the COVID thing is where we expected our business to actually go down, because all of our readers are enthusiasts, they all went back into their garages because they couldn't do anything else. And our phones started ringing off the wall because they needed books to tell them how to do this stuff. Any of you that are not familiar, I'll just show you. We actually publish this magazine monthly, Australian Street Writing Magazine. That's in all the newsagents. And we've been doing that for 45 years. Now, from the first day we actually started, we archived and indexed every bit of material we've got, particularly photographically. And now that COVID came and we could no longer travel around gathering all that material, we're able to actually dive into our archives and bring out all sorts of historical articles and things, which has proved a real hit. And it's sent things the other way. People just can't get enough of it. We've also heavily relied on providing technical information, and we have an online bookshop, if you like, where you can order all sorts of technical books about everything to do with cars. You can buy everything you want from us to completely rebuild a car. And again, this is one that I just finished very recently. And this is a book that's based on the quite stringent legal regulations that are in place now for modifying vehicles. And this is the go-to book. If you want to know how to do it, you buy this book. We've even got state authorities recommending people get that book before they start modifying a vehicle. So we've been able to do those things just since COVID started. 11 years ago, we started doing this magazine, it's an annual. It's quite a thick, glossy, very, very glossy looking thing with information in it from all around the world, and we send it back all around the world from here. Now that I actually started this book because I could see a change coming with all the digital technology. I thought we'll take advantage of that, because I thought as the technology in printing changes, we will be able to produce this magazine here, but upload it to printers all around the world, print it on site and deliver it locally. Well, the technology hasn't kept up with us yet. We're still ahead of it. I was looking forward to what they call pack print in Melbourne in about 2 months' time, and I see yesterday they cancelled it, because that's the showcase for where all of the new technology gets exposed. And we've been at the last pack print, I went chasing people from all around the world and the manufacturers of printing material and everything else to find out if they'd reached this point where they could do this for it, and it still wasn't there. Some thought they could, and when we actually put it to the test, they couldn't do it. I still think that day will come. And what it allows us to do is to very effectively produce material, as Kerry spoke about before. You can produce stuff from anywhere in the world and put it anywhere in the world with the new technology. You've got to be very careful how you manage it. You've got to be careful not to jump in too early on new technology. It's another one of my favorite pet subjects I've pushed for years. Don't be the first user, be the second. Let someone else sort out the details first, and then come in when it's settled down and it's reliable. It's proven a real winner for us over the years, and so that's how we've gone about our business. Not being able to travel has been quite a change for us. We've barely left our office for the last 18 months. We did manage to sneak in a couple of big events. There was one in Sydney that just happened to slot in nicely between all of the shutdowns. It was very successful, and even just last week there was a swap meet at Malden, and usually just a very small swap meet. It was huge because people just wanted somewhere to go. And again, it fell in between the COVID shutdowns, and there were thousands of people there, and everyone was just wanted to be out, get out into the air and meet people and do things. So it's been different, but it's made us look again at what we do. We've even changed our work practices internally because we can work all different hours and it fits around family and all sorts of things. And unfortunately, I love it too much. I should have retired about 7 or 8 years ago, but I just can't do it. I love doing this stuff so much. I probably never will. They'll cut me out of here eventually. But and I must just mention, Marnie, we've had an association with the Bendigo Bank through another organisations that I'm the chairman of. And we've benefited greatly from the community enterprise scheme that's put in place, and that enabled in no small part for our organisation, the Castlemaine Hot Rod Centre, to actually gain a lease over the old tech school here, where we're establishing a trade training organisation in what was the trade training, and also establishing a hot rod heritage centre, where all of this history that we've been gathering over all the years can be showcased to all of Australia. We're well down the track on that, and it's all moving along after 15 years of solid work. We're nearly there. So I'd just like to commend the bank for that attitude, and and those schemes, they work very well. I've been chairman of the one here since its inception almost, and some of the other community things we've been able to put money in out of that community enterprise scheme been fantastic, and continue to do so.
Which just goes to prove my point nicely, Larry. Business and community goes hand in hand. And, with the success of businesses, those people go on and show leadership in all sorts of forms. And I'm just so pleased that you've all been willing to share your stories with me over the years and again tonight. And thank you, Larry. It's been just so good to hear. And if anyone was wondering, Larry was driving that beautiful red car in the slideshow. And sadly, I don't think it's in colour in the book, but you've got some lovely vehicles to drive around.
One thing too, Kerry, on the use of the word community, I think is, and some people don't look at it this way sometimes, but we all think of community, tend to think of community as your own local community. But in my instance, for instance, our community are those vehicle enthusiasts all around the world. That's a community too. And the wonderful thing we've been able to experience through all of that, and why I find it so hard to retire, is that everyone in that community treats you just like your family. And the reward you can get from that, and this is the mistake that I sort of was alluding to before, that the corporate publishers make, is they only see a bottom line, whereas we see friends and neighbours and people who think like us and act like us, and they are absolutely rusted on supporters of what we do. I've had people come to us and say, look, if you put out a book with nothing inside it, but it had your graffiti logo on the front, I'd buy it. It's that reliability and that access to the community that you're part of yourself that makes all the difference. So if you're operating a business in any of those sort of aspects, I strongly encourage you to just push it and push it and push it, because you'll just get more and more rewards back.
Thank you. You've just epitomised beautifully what we're trying to get across in the book. And thank you to everyone for sharing your stories tonight. Thank you, Marnie, for being our special guest and saying those kind words. It's been lovely to have you in the room.
It's been wonderful to be here, and this is just this is what it's all about. And I love, Larry, you're exactly right about communities. They are the communities of interest. They're the things that bind us together, which isn't necessarily always geographical. It's the things that the common interests that you have is your community. And I love small business, and I just love hearing just the amazing stuff that's done. I wish everyone, and this is why it's so great, the book, Kerry, I just wish everyone could hear these stories, and just, it's a shot in the arm. It's an absolute shot in the arm. So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.